What's up, guys? This is Carter Thomas with Coin Mastery TV. Make sure you go to coinmastery.com/invest. Join the newsletter list. Join us on this financial revolution, domination, and everything in between. Now, we're looking at our good friend Bitcoin once again, but we're not going to talk about this too much because I think we are getting to the point where it's beating a dead horse to a certain extent. And until this either bounces or breaks off of this trend line support, it's very difficult to make any sort of clear strategy to-do list. So as far as I'm concerned, we are just going to kind of wait and see. Now, there is a case to be made based on a lot of different research I've done. I've been studying a lot of these famous kind of economists, traders, and Wyckoff being one that is really one of the most famous. And this is starting to look like one of those accumulation phases, right? Especially if you get closer down to like the 30-minute chart. But if you zoomed in right where we are now, for anybody who's listening to the podcast, really in the past, let's call it 2 days, we're starting to have this down. We had this down period. We're seeing this kind of up and down chop. And if it followed his theory, I should say, it would bounce off of this and it would go up. Now, would it break this trend line, this downward trend line? No idea. But that's one potential theory that could happen. Then you got a lot of other people that when you zoom out and you look at the kind of bigger picture of what's going on here on a clear downtrend, they're talking about just blasting through this thing, going full bear trend to see what 3,000 kind of, just full send type of situation. And honestly, like I said, I just don't predict price. I don't try to predict price. I think anyone who does, that's great, but that's not my thing. I just want to react. And so I'm just going to watch this and play it as it comes. And for anybody out there, I cannot stress this enough. When this thing does make a move, it's going to be big and it's going to be fast, all right? And it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to break down to 3,000 or shoot up to 20,000 overnight, but it means that as soon as it starts to get momentum in one direction, a lot is going to happen quickly. And right now, it's very boring, relatively speaking, obviously. And when it's boring, people lose the interest, right? They don't have the same amount of dopamine, which doesn't lead to the same amount of planning that they may have done previously, the same amount of work. And that's the fallacy. That's the problem. This is going to explode in one way or the other. There is going to be huge opportunities in Bitcoin, one way or another, and along with other cryptocurrencies. And if you don't have a plan, you're going to wake up every day, and instead of executing your plan, you're going to go on Twitter and YouTube to find a plan. That's the problem. Okay? Now, to show how kind of split people are, Ari Paul put out a great poll, which you may have seen. I retweeted it. It's got 15,506 votes so far. And he said, which price will Bitcoin see first? The first was 4,800, which I picked. And the second was 13,300. And it's almost an even split. 48% chose 4,800, 52% chose 13,000. Now, I think that it doesn't mean that either one of these is going to happen. It's kind of a prediction on which way it's going to go. I think it's going to go down purely because of traditional, market structure, right? There's so much bearish activity in the chart that consistently pressing against this trend line without massive volume is difficult. Now, if there is no bad news in the next 2 months, it could easily pop back up and I could be proved wrong. I hope I'm proved wrong. That would be amazing. Make a lot more money that way. But I just think that there's still going to be a couple big bombs of FUD that come out related to regulation and use cases and all that sort of thing, which is why I think that we still have some downward movement to go. And also realizing that we kind of need to have that downward dump in order to have real to go like massively big on the upside to get that huge next $150,000 Bitcoin. Because if we don't do that, the chart just doesn't really doesn't work out the same way. You can't go. It's very hard to go parabolic again. That's just my 2 cents. As always, as you guys know, I'm not a professional financial advisor. None of this is professional financial advice. Got to remember to say that every day. But I would go check this out. But I think that this indecision is very, very important to realize that nobody knows. If they do know, they're certainly not going to tell you because they're like manipulating the market. Right? They're the one or two whales out there that have access to the money and to the bots that are controlling it all. And that's why it's better to react than to predict. All right. Along with that, we are dropping below 300 million in the market cap, which is, I wouldn't say it's a huge deal, but it's certainly a psychological level, just like everything else in the charts. Altcoins, there's nothing new here. I think that it's important to be very clear. The reason I talk about Bitcoin, especially right now, and I haven't really talked about altcoins recently, is because in my opinion, like none of these altcoins really matter. There's no decoupling of these altcoins. If Bitcoin goes down, everything's going down. If Bitcoin goes up, everything's going up. And you can play the game where you try to beat Bitcoin by finding some particular altcoin that's going to beat it. But that doesn't, like, the trend is really the only thing that matters. So when we had this bounce off of the trend line, last week, we saw the beginnings of what was alt season, air quotes on that. And that's when you can go into altcoins and you can see all the Twitter people just posting, hey, I've got this amazing chart. Look at this thing pump. And everybody's just throwing money at it. And as quickly as it comes up, it comes back down. That is why I'm not spending time on a lot of these altcoins. And there are plenty of people that will make a YouTube video or get on Twitter and tell you which one's going to be the next big thing. But it's just not a strategy. If that's not gambling, I don't know what is. So keeping an eye on altcoins, taking time to reevaluate your altcoins and your strategy. But this Bitcoin chart, it's everything. It drives everything across the board, really bar none. Now, this came out yesterday. I didn't mention it, but I think it's interesting. Is the CBOE, which, if you don't know, that's the kind of the options and futures market that was the first Bitcoin futures. Now, they are not the biggest. The CME is much bigger from a future standpoint, but the CBOE is a large entity in the global scale, or I should say federal scale. It's in the U.S. They are lobbying the SEC mostly for a Bitcoin ETF. And their argument is that there's enough liquidity in the market to justify an ETF so that the ETF itself will not become a liability. That's really the pushback that ETFs have right now, is the volatility in the market. Volatility comes from lack of liquidity. That's that's really how the basis of volatility. And so it's interesting for them to push this, because as you guys know, ETFs are that's the thing, right? That if you want to get people into crypto, if you want to get the masses into crypto, ETFs are the thing, more than anything else in the short term. And because, for a million reasons. And so they're pushing this. This is obviously, I think this is going to coincide as the SEC delivers their regulatory legislation and final findings about things like that. But this is overall, I would say, pretty good news. Now, at the same time, the CBOE and CME put out futures, and did that necessarily help crypto? Well, who knows? It didn't really help the price, obviously, because they came out right when the price started to go down. But it did maybe help get trading desks set up in more legitimate operations. It brought much more attention, so that for the next big wave of crypto growth, the framework is built out, right? The market gets built out. And so I think the CBOE is trying to do the same thing. I do not know if they're going to be successful yet, because I think it's a very tough sell that Bitcoin has enough liquidity right now, especially with the amount of manipulation that's involved. So until the CFTC, in my opinion, can regulate exchanges, I think ETFs are going to have a very hard time to get past That's just my 2 cents, but I do think that this is very, very good news to see. And we're going in the right direction. All right. That's enough about that. I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about a podcast I listened to yesterday. Now, there's a company called Freedom Fastlane. Ryan Daniel Moran, I should say. Really nice guy. I don't think we've actually met, but we've got a lot of mutual friends, and he has built a couple 10-figure businesses on Amazon, right? Selling products and things like that. And he's also done a very good job as an investor and building, putting out content around kind of cash flow style, wealth generating investing. He's not a proponent of cryptocurrency by any means, but he is open-minded, as any investor would be. And so he put a podcast out recently that I'll link to. You guys can check it out. And it's got a panel of people. And on the panel, there's real estate investors, there's tax attorneys, there's a guy who invests in mobile homes, somebody who invests in something else, and then someone who's like 90% in crypto. Now, the key to this is that this was recorded in December. I want to say it was like mid-December, based on the conversation. And the first, call it 20 minutes of this panel was really about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, as it would be. And it was kind of this one guy, one of the panelists, I wouldn't even say defending it. He just trying to sell it, right? Trying to explain to these other professional investors what the value of cryptocurrency is. And what I think is really fascinating, it's what really kind of the light bulb that I had was, when you listen to this, and I would encourage you to listen to this. There's no sponsorship. Like, this is all just because I like the podcast. You should go listen to it because you hear the conversation. You hear somebody talking like at the peak of the bubble right here, right? Let's call it December 15th at 17,000. And they're talking about how it's going to, it's just, we're right at the beginning. Things are going to go explode. It's going to be huge. This is going to change the world. It's like, it's everything that everybody in the crypto world was talking about right around in December. And when the same questions come up that have come up many other times, like, well, how do you value it? Like, explain to me how this is worth anything, all the kind of skeptical investor questions. And I think that when you look back now and you hear somebody talking about crypto in December, about how it's just going to keep going straight up, now that you have experienced 3 months of down cycles for the most part, and uncertainty and lack of hype, it is a very interesting perspective to get. And this is one of the things where, a couple of weeks ago, I tweeted about how I look at crypto more as a speculation than an investment for now. I think over the long term, it's definitely going to be an investment, but that's because of this type of shift, right? How fast things can change for no other reason than people just stop believing in it. Now, I think that there's a lot of other really good information in this podcast about, I don't know, if you don't know anything about investing or building wealth, you should listen to it, because you may get a visceral reaction to like how boring it seems, right? How boring it may feel to get 8, 9, 10% a year compounding interest and cash flow, when in reality, that is what the professional investment world is. That's how you create big wealth. Usually you build it through a business, and then you use the profits and dump it into cash generating assets, or you just put your savings into cash generating assets. But it's just such an interesting dichotomy. And my personal takeaway, and I think everyone's gonna have a different one, is that I look back and I remember hearing the same conversations. I remember having, like, on this channel, myself included, and like, were they completely founded in reality? Were we, as crypto enthusiasts, truly open-minded? Like, were we right to shoot down professional investors, the same, like people who are like, this is a bubble, it's going to go down, watch yourself. We're like, no, you have no idea what you're talking about. This is going to change the world. And now it has gone down. The reason why this is important, and the reason why I care about this, is because we're at a point now where there's a lot of people that are like, it's going to keep going down. Like, look at the bubble curve. This thing is going to keep continuing. You've also got a very, very strong case that this could easily accumulate here and pop off like gold does and just be, go on to the next parabolic wave. And I think that if I could fast forward 2 months, what would I look at and be able to analyze this current situation, both on the chart, but also on the news cycle, on the market sentiment? How could I look at what's going on now, and how can I make a case and be like, of course it was going to go up then, or of course it was going to fall down? Which one makes the most sense? Because when you look back at here and you listen to podcasts like this, and you listen to maybe even some of these videos, or go look at YouTube on any video, and you look at the videos that were recorded in mid-December and listen to the conversations that you already have. When you look back, you're like, man, of course this was the top of the bubble. Look how euphoric everyone was. Look how easy it was to make money. And that is how I think you can start to evaluate where we are now, right? Treat this as if, treat today. Look at today as if you are looking at it from the future. How could you make the bull case? How could you make the bear case in that capacity? For example, a bull case might be like, well, right at this trend line, just these banks put out a press release and said, we're going all in on Bitcoin, or some huge investors came in, or some news came out and there was just like Bitcoin became used by Amazon. Something happened and it just exploded. Or, right, this was when we were looking at it and the regulators came out and said, Bitcoin is going to be highly regulated and everything's a security, and here are the tight rules, and here's who's getting delisted. And that's what dropped it. But painting that picture as if you're in the future, trying to remove the hope and the idealism of what this could potentially be, I think that's really, really important. And that's what I got out of it. Other people will get other pieces out of it, but I would encourage people to listen to that, get investment advice, or not investment advice, because it's definitely not investment advice. It's just perspective. I tweeted about Seth Godin as well, Coin Mastery listener. Matt emailed this to me, so thank you for that, which I thought was really great. I think Seth, who I mentioned yesterday in that book, actually, he has a great blog. I don't know if he puts it out every single day anymore, but he used to. And he puts out these very short blog posts. The idea is that when something new is coming out, especially a new technology, you need to have stories that are built with examples. And what I mean by that is a really fun exercise is to go through ICO pitches, or go through YouTube videos, or just conversations, especially presentations that are on stage. And when somebody is trying to explain a new concept to you, notice how many times they use the word imagine. So if you're talking about, let's just, crypto market cap, just opening this up, Funfair. This is a random coin. I think Funfair is a casino, right? So if someone was pitching or trying to explain why someone should invest in Funfair, they might say, look, imagine a casino where everything is tracked evenly and all the odds are transparent. And imagine that you get paid out instantly from anywhere in the world, right? You paint a picture, you tell a story to get somebody to believe in that technology, versus if Funfair was an established betting odd system that was used by 55 different companies already, casinos, whatever, you wouldn't need to say, oh, imagine this. You'd say, listen, here's your problem. Here's your solution. Here's who else uses it. Here's a guarantee. Here's the price. Boom. right? There's no story. It's a sales pitch. And that's the difference because people don't know what it is yet. And so Seth's blog post, he references email. And he talks about how people he would say stories about email helped us see that the world would it would save us time and save us money, help us through the bureaucracy, save time and cycle faster. It took just a few weeks of stories of email to spread through the business school where I was there, went 30 years ago. On the other hand, it took a long time for the story of mobile phones to be deeply understood. For years, it was seen as the phone without wires, not a supercomputer that would change the world, the way a billion people interact. And he goes on to talk about Bitcoin and blockchain and 3D printing and things like that. He talks about the story right now with Bitcoin and blockchain. Now, this was written in 2016, I believe, January 2016. The story was all about speculation. Now, the story is all about transparency, about speed, about security, about dismantling certain archaic industries. It's also about efficiency and whatever else it may be. But there's a huge clash because there's not a lot of use cases yet. There are very few use cases. There's use cases that like are theoretical and actually could work. Like, for example, if you wanted to pay me in Bitcoin, it can happen, but it's just not. It's not necessarily a have to have. It's that can do that. And until the story shifts to a sales pitch, that's when it keeps being a speculation and doesn't turn into investment yet. And it will happen at some point with many of these coins. A majority of them it won't because they're just going to die. But some of these coins it will happen. And when it does, it stops being a story. But you need this story to get people excited. And so the reason why this matters to anybody listening or watching this is because if you are talking to other people, even when you're talking to yourself, to be perfectly honest, if you are not telling a compelling story specific to the person listening, you are going to have a very hard time getting people to adopt the technology. So if you were talking to somebody who is very risk averse, who is very conservative, right? Let's say professional investor, usually a very conservative person, financially speaking. If you talk about how much money they can make, if you talk about the crazy returns that crypto can offer, they're going to be extremely turned off. Like that's not interesting to them. But if you tell them a story about how they can invest in mining and real estate and cash flow and blah, blah, like something that appeals to a conservative investor, that will get them interested in that capacity. And so there's a lot of different stories that can be told right now. But the predominant story right now is that this is all vaporware. It's all artificial scams. It's all made up. There's no real business here. And we need a story that is better than that. And unfortunately, there is no one story that can blanket all of those together. It's more of an individual, especially about the person. But this is so critical. And in my opinion, it is not necessarily the lack of use cases or network size or transaction volume that's creating this chart bearish sentiment. It is the fact that the story no longer holds. The story in the upswing was that it's going to take over the world. But more importantly, the story was it's going to keep going up. It always goes up. It's a speculative investment. Now it's no longer a speculative investment. So what is crypto? And then you get into the stories where you actually have to justify it by comparing apples to apples. Maybe it's a company to another company, or you have to take a huge leap of faith and say that this is a new technology that's going to disrupt something that's never been done before. And that becomes a big leap of faith that requires a lot. But I think that these are the kind of ideas that help you look at things like price, make decisions, and whether you're holding, whether you're trading, whether you're day trading, whether you're long-term trading, whether you are just observing, whatever. Seeing these bigger picture ideas, understanding what stories are being told will make a difference. And on a micro level, for each person, for everyone out there individually listening, what story are you telling yourself about the coins in your portfolio? If you own, let's say, Decred, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right? It's a governance coin. What story are you telling yourself that keeps you holding it? Does that story still hold up, or is it a story that you personally are tied to? And it can extend beyond that. Are you not selling because the story is that you don't want to pay capital gains, or you don't want to take a loss? Is that a story? Is that a powerful story that keeps you holding onto coins that you shouldn't or should have? What's the story? What's the big story? What's your story? What's everybody's story? That's what's driving everything. And if you don't think that that's the case, I don't know. You can believe what you want, but until these coins start to actually compete with established companies, doesn't matter what you or I think. It matters what the world thinks. It matters what the market thinks. And the market is not going to reward anything that does not make money, at least not in the short term. That's why stories are so powerful. All right. Lastly, nice little picture of some sharks circling with blood in the water. If you're scared of sharks, hopefully this doesn't terrify you. I've actually I swam by some sharks in the Caribbean and in Hawaii, both of which, luckily they're like one was nurse sharks, one was reef sharks, both of which are not going to really do much to you. Saw a few tiger sharks, but it's terrifying when you see them in real life. Like, they have a weird thing, like they move weird. But the reason I'm bringing this up is to highlight something that I've noticed. And one thing I've noticed is that we are getting back to I keep harping on this Bitcoin chart. There is blood in the water right now. You look at the Google trends of buying Bitcoin, of altcoins, of everything. It's at an all-time low. Hype level, all-time low. Half the YouTubers that used to put out are barely putting out content anymore. If they do, it's not nearly as good as it used to be. Twitter posts are going down. Everything is just bzzz. And that is when sharks come out. At least that's when they start to look at opportunities, is when the energy of the masses starts to fall apart, right? And what I can tell you is that there is blood in the water right now. And the sharks, they see that and they can smell that. And I do not know if that means that they are just going to continue this up and down stuff where they can just liquidate people who are trying to margin trade and just end as many people as possible. I don't know if it means that they're going to try to tank the price even further. I don't know if it means they're going to drive it up to 50,000 and everybody misses out on it and they just own the market before the masses get in. All I know is that there is some serious interest in Bitcoin right now that doesn't get seen on the exchanges. And it does not mean the price is going to go up. It means that there is a lot of people that want to own a piece of the pie. They don't care if it's going to be a $1,000 or $10,000. They just want to own part of the net. They want to own as much of the percentage of 21 million or whatever, 19 million that's left as they possibly can. And they will do what they need to do to make that happen. Again, that does not mean they're going to go on GDAX or Gemini and buy $5 million worth of Bitcoin. It means that they see an opportunity. They see the fear. They see the hype dying. And this is the kind of thing that you really need to keep in mind, because what happens is that it's not only just institutional investors, it's people in the crypto community who are going to tell you, hey, this is going to collapse. This is going to break down. This is going to fall through, because like we talked about yesterday, once greed starts to fall away, the next evolution of that is status. And the next evolution of status is power, when you can't maintain status. And once you get out of power, then you get into politics. Like there's a clear line to be drawn. So keep that in mind when you look at this price. And the best way to think about this, in my opinion, is you ask yourself, if you had $100 million and you wanted to own as much Bitcoin as you possibly could, what would you do? Would you tank the market? Maybe not. Because if you tank the market, a lot of new people are going to come in and be like, wow, this is a huge opportunity. I'm going to buy it more. Would you just go and would you accumulate at this price right now? Maybe. Would you collude with other people and bots and everything else and just slowly accumulate everything? Would you skyrocket the price and just get it over with so that nobody else could get in because it's too expensive now? Like, what would you do if you had an unlimited amount of money? But that is what people are thinking about. That is what the sharks are doing. And if you think like that, you will be able to look at what's happening the way that any professional investor would. And I want to reiterate, it does not mean that they're going to tank the price, because they do not think about this chart the same way most retail investors do. Price does not matter as much as owning a supply of the Bitcoin pool matters, right? They care about winning the game. They care about power. They do not necessarily care about the greed, right? Greed is just a game. It's a scorecard. Power is what matters. And this is going to be a power play, what happens next with Bitcoin, because there is value in a digital scarce asset, Bitcoin, store of value. The winners are going to be the ones who own the most of it, right? That's the thing as an international currency. So with that, we'll rock it out. Again, we're going to hang and watch. Go from there. But it is a really fascinating time. I'm just going to leave it at that. Hope you guys have a great day. I will catch you tomorrow. Peace out.